was deliberately blocking her because she was transfixed on David with that big, feral sort of grin that she has.
Then Meghan Markle goes out of her way to make him comment about it. And now it's a story, okay? Now it's a...
So yeah, this is Meghan's machine in a clean little box.
Her hand is out. He's already walking past it. That's the shot everyone's arguing about right now.
The clip of Meghan's hand hanging in the air was doing real damage, so the PR machine did what it always does. It found a famous friend and handed him a statement. David Foster told people...
But watch the few seconds before that frame, the ones almost nobody's talking about. Her hand isn't the only thing reaching toward David Foster that night. Her whole body is turned his way, and the woman standing right next to her, his own wife, barely gets a glance. Everyone online is asking whether Meghan Markle got snubbed on a red carpet.
Was Meghan Markle snubbed? This whole thing has gotten so out of hand. She seemingly forced him to speak to people to say, no, it wasn't a snub. We got to talk about...
Almost nobody's asking why she couldn't stop looking at somebody else's husband. Stick around, because by the end of this, the handshake might not even be the part worth remembering. Here's the story as most people have heard it. A charity gala, a red carpet. Meghan puts her hand out. David Foster walks straight past it without shaking it. Someone in the crowd catches it on video. The clip goes viral within a day.
I'll be honest, I saw this story a couple days ago, this awkward moment where Meghan Markle was left hanging. And honestly, when I saw the still frame that a lot of people on X and everybody was sharing, I was like, ooh.
Within a week, Foster is on the record with People magazine, insisting there was no snub at all and calling the whole thing a lie invented for clicks. Case closed.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's journey in the public spotlight has once again reached epic levels of dumb. And this latest David Foster story of the alleged snub is part of it. This is a dumb story, ladies and gentlemen. This is a stupid story. In fact,
according to basically every channel that's covered this so far. Except that's not actually the interesting part. The interesting part is everything that happened just before the camera caught that handshake, and everything that's happened between these two families for the last 5 years. Once you line all of it up, the missed handshake stops looking like the headline. It starts looking like the smallest detail in the story.
Well, you remember the gala? That should have been the important thing, but no. You already saw the August 7 carpet in Victoria. Meghan's arm goes out. Foster walks past. The internet called it a snub. We covered that night. The new
3 separate things have to line up for that to be true, though. So this only works if all 3 actually hold up. What the footage shows in the seconds before the handshake, what happened the last time these two couples spent real time together, and what David Foster actually chose to say and not say once the story blew up. Take them one at a time. Start with what's actually on camera, because that matters more than what anyone says about it afterward. Meghan and Harry arrive on the red carpet at the David Foster and Friends Foundation Gala. This is Foster's big annual event, the one that raises money for his organ transplant foundation, and it draws a serious guest list. Foster's wife, the singer Katharine McPhee, is standing right there too, close enough to be in the same shot. In the earliest frames, it's McPhee who's closest to Meghan. She's angled toward her, seemingly mid-conversation, the kind of small talk 2 women standing next to each other at an event naturally fall into. Then Meghan's arm comes up. It swings across in front of Harry and directly in front of Katharine. Depending on which frame you freeze, it looks like Meghan is either reaching toward David Foster or physically screening his wife out of the shot entirely. Either way, by the time the picture settles, Katharine's face is reduced to a sliver over Meghan's shoulder. Meghan's attention, meanwhile, is locked on David.
He was deliberately blocking her because she was transfixed on David with that big, feral sort of grin that she has.
A few seconds after that is when David Foster appears to walk past without shaking her hand. Cameras catch the empty air where her palm should have landed. That's the frame that broke the internet.
But we've seen Meghan have a lack of manners across multiple...
Slowed down, replayed, captioned, argued about for days. But keep watching, because the clip doesn't actually stop there, and the rest of it complicates the simple version of this story even more. Harry extends his own hand a beat later and gets what looks like a warmer response, a smile, an arm gesture, something closer to an actual greeting. Somebody in the group can be heard saying, "Ah, welcome, come."
She's awkwardly throwing her hand out. Oh, sorry, I thought I had it on frame. I'm sorry. Welcome. Harry's extending his hand out too. Welcome, come. And he's smiling. He's acknowledging the hand. You just caught the first 2 seconds where he's looking for where he's going to walk. But we don't see over there where he
Which is the kind of line you say when you've just noticed someone, not the kind of line you say while deliberately ignoring them.
So Meghan does not have, I would say, great social skills. She knows where the camera is.
And in the middle of all of it, Meghan is visibly occupied fussing with her dress, adjusting the hem, glancing down rather than at either Foster. So the moment isn't actually one clean snub frozen in time. It's several seconds of overlapping, slightly awkward movement, 4 people converging on a red carpet at once, with cameras only catching fragments of it. Slow it down further though, and a second story sits right next to the first one, playing out in almost the exact same handful of seconds. Before anyone gets to debate whether David snubbed Meghan, Meghan appears to have already sidelined his wife just to get to him. Nobody covering this story mentioned that part. Every single piece of coverage went straight to the handshake and skipped right past what happened 2 seconds earlier on the same red carpet, in the same clip everyone was already watching. That's the first contradiction here. The story everyone agreed on was Meghan, the victim of an ignored hand. The footage, watched closely, tells a messier version where nobody in that 4-person group is behaving quite as simply as the headlines suggest. To understand why any of this matters, go back 5 years to when Harry and Meghan first moved to Montecito. Not long after they settled in, the couple was photographed having dinner with David Foster and Katharine McPhee. At the time, it read as a nice, normal thing. New neighbours, celebrity friends, a friendly welcome to the neighbourhood. Except the dinner came with a press release. Somebody told the paparazzi exactly where the 2 couples would be and exactly when.
Well, when they first moved to Montecito back in 2020, they went out to dinner, and that's when a press release was given. And I think lots of celebrities outed themselves for using paparazzi, doing the pap strolls where they pre-arrange the paparazzi to be there, because in the pandemic, everyone was wearing masks. You won't know who these people are walking up and down the street, you know? So, of course, it was very, very obvious that they have been told.
Photographers were waiting outside the restaurant before anyone even sat down. There's even a shot of Harry and Meghan posing right beside the restaurant sign, like a walking advertisement for the place. That's not what old friends catching up over dinner usually looks like. That's what a publicity op looks like, dressed up as a spontaneous night out. Foster, for what it's worth, has always had a reason to give Harry the benefit of the doubt that a lot of other people in Hollywood wouldn't. He was close to Princess Diana, the way plenty of stars of that generation were, and that connection tends to buy Harry a kind of permanent goodwill that people meeting him for the first time today wouldn't automatically extend. In effect, it's a free pass, and it's one very few people in his orbit get to hand out. But even a free pass has limits, and here's where it gets messier. A post that circulated widely around the same time as that first dinner claimed there had actually been a falling out between the 2 couples not long after it happened. One unverified reply attached to that post described Meghan as having been clinging to David like a hot cat. Worth being very clear about what that is. It is not a confirmed report from Foster, McPhee, or anyone close to them. It's a second-hand claim from an anonymous account, and it should be treated exactly like that. A rumour, not a fact. But it lines up strangely well with what the cameras actually caught years later on that same red carpet. Because whatever happened after that first stage dinner, David Foster and Katharine McPhee mostly vanished from Harry and Meghan's social circle. No more dinners together. No more sightings as 2 couples out on the town. The one time their paths crossed again at a polo match in Montecito, Meghan didn't even show up.
Eaten out. There was even a photograph of Harry and Meghan stood right by the Lucky sign, you know, to plug the restaurant as well. So you didn't see David and Katharine spend any time with them after that. And then there was a polo match where Meghan didn't go in Montecito, and David Foster was seen with his young baby at the time with Catherine, talking to Harry.
It was just David, his young child, and Harry making small talk on the sidelines, which makes this gala the first real encounter between the two couples in years. And within seconds of it starting, the same dynamic that reportedly caused problems back in 2020 was apparently playing out all over again in front of everyone's cameras. So here's where the story actually flips. The public conversation has spent an entire week asking one question. Did David Foster snub Meghan Markle? Nobody's asked the question that the footage itself is raising, which is whether Meghan's own behaviour toward David, not once but apparently twice 5 years apart, is the actual thread running through this entire relationship. Think about how differently the last two sections read once that question is on the table. A staged dinner stops being a friendly welcome to the neighbourhood and starts looking like an opening move. A vague second-hand rumour about a falling out stops being random internet noise and starts looking like the missing middle chapter. A years-long silence between two couples who supposedly get along stops looking like busy schedules and starts looking like distance kept on purpose. That reframes everything that happens next. Because if you assume Meghan is simply the injured party here, David Foster's carefully worded statement looks like a friend clearing up a misunderstanding. But if there's any truth to the pattern building underneath it, that same statement starts to look like something else entirely. Management. So the clip goes viral. And within days, David Foster releases a statement to People magazine to shut the story down. Read it closely because the wording matters more than it looks like on the surface.
As the host of the David Foster and Friends Foundation event, I had already greeted our friends, the Duke and Duchess, at the entrance 10 minutes before the red carpet encounter. Foster says. They both graciously and selfishly gave their time and went beyond to engage with everyone. Harry and Meghan are dear friends of mine. Anyone watching can see there's no awkward moment, and certain...
Foster says he'd already greeted our friends the Duke and Duchess at the entrance, a full 10 minutes before the red carpet moment everyone actually saw. He calls them dear friends of mine. He says anyone watching can see there was no awkward moment, and in his words, certainly no snub. Then he goes further, accusing unnamed media outlets of turning simple positioning into a hurtful lie.
Like it was written in a war room. And I quote, "It's sad that certain media chose to deceive a red carpet encounter for clickbait."
That is a lot of very specific, very defensive language for a handshake that literally no camera caught in full.
He also called the couple gracious and selfless. Okay, that is a lie, by the way. And at the same time, that is a lot of...
This is a 76-year-old man at his own charity gala on the night his foundation raised $14.5 million for organ transplant research, spending part of his statement explaining exactly where he was standing and exactly what he meant by it.
Foster is 76. He raised $14.5 million that night for his transplant charity, and he still had to spend a paragraph explaining why her hand found nothing, air.
Notice something else in the wording, too. At no point does Foster single Meghan out warmly, by name, on her own. It's always the Duke and Duchess, always our friends, plural. For two people he's supposedly close enough to call dear friends, that's a strangely careful, hands-off way to talk about one of them specifically. If this were simply an old friend brushing off a silly headline, you'd expect something warmer, something more personal. Instead, it reads like a statement built by someone choosing every word on purpose.
So you either believe the clip or believe the statement. Either way, Methane does not answer the picture. She outsources the answer to a composer who needs her name next to his foundation, and as much as she needs his denial next to her wig, because he has to set the record.
And that's worth sitting with, because people who are genuinely unbothered by a viral clip don't usually go out of their way to publicly explain their friendship, their guest list, and their own gala's optics to a national magazine.
But people who are unbothered do not issue exclusive statements about positioning or friendship or graciousness. People who are running a deflection,
That's not what an unbothered friend does. That looks more like someone smoothing something over, quietly and carefully, without saying a word more than necessary.
Then Meghan Markle goes out of her way to make him comment about it. And now it's a story, okay? Now it's a...
Which raises the question nobody's actually asked out loud. Smoothing over what, exactly?
Why did you make a comment about it? Are you kidding me? I don't believe for a second David Foster even knew or read or cared about this unless someone on Meghan's camp required him to go set the record straight on People magazine, where Prince Harry and sources of Meghan Harry are always very quick.
A handshake that missed by a few inches, or 5 years of a friendship that's gone conspicuously cold, resurfacing at the worst possible moment in front of his own wife for the first time since it allegedly fell apart the last time. This isn't even the first time a friend of the couple has ended up doing this kind of cleanup work. Whenever a moment like this goes viral, the pattern tends to look the same. A sympathetic outlet gets the exclusive. A friend goes on record softening the story. The blame lands squarely on unnamed certain media for supposedly twisting an innocent moment.
So yeah, this is Meghan's machine in a clean little box. A viral clip lands, the comment section eats it, a sympathetic outlet gets an exclusive, and the friend of the house goes on the record. The villain becomes certain media. I feel...
It's a tidy little formula, and it works often enough that it's easy to miss how strange it actually is that so many small, ordinary moments seem to require a formal denial at all. Ordinary, awkward interactions don't usually need statements. Somebody trips on a red carpet, somebody's mic doesn't pick up a greeting, somebody's looking the wrong way in a photo, and none of it gets a press release. It just happens, and everyone moves on by the next news cycle. It's worth asking why this particular couple's ordinary moments so consistently need somebody else, a friend, a spokesperson, an unnamed source to step in and explain them after the fact.
Yes, go on.
They've said sources, and this hasn't been confirmed by David Foster's team, but sources have spoken to the Daily Mail, shocker, and said that he was very excited that Harry and Meghan were being there, but he just couldn't see them. On the carpet, literally on the spot where he was meeting other guests with the cameras, you know, they've probably got the marker on the carpet,
To be fair, this whole saga has plenty of nonsense attached to it too, and it deserves to be knocked down just as directly. A separate claim went around online alleging David Foster had told the press he wasn't planning to attend a birthday celebration for the couple's daughter. That quote got repeated across social media and even picked up by a few smaller outlets as if it were established fact. Except there's no verified source for it anywhere. No mainstream outlet has that quote on record, ever, from anyone. It appears to be entirely invented, one more piece of noise in a story that's already drowning in unverifiable claims coming from every direction at once. That's worth sitting with because it genuinely cuts both ways. Plenty of people online are willing to invent negative stories about this couple simply because negative stories about them perform well. But that same environment makes it just as easy to wave away the claims that are actually backed by real video evidence, like Meghan visibly angling her body toward David Foster and away from his own wife. That part isn't a rumour floating around an anonymous account. It's on tape, watchable by anyone, frame by frame. The lesson here isn't believe everything you see about this couple. It's check what's actually verifiable before deciding what the story is. By that standard, the birthday quote falls apart completely under basic scrutiny. Nobody can point to where it was actually said, to who or when. The red carpet footage doesn't have that problem. It exists, it's time-stamped, and anyone can watch it themselves right now and draw their own conclusions. Here's the part that tends to get lost once a story like this turns into a week of arguing over a single frame. Somebody actually has to live with the fallout. And it's rarely the two people at the centre of it. David Foster built his entire evening around raising money for a cause tied to his own family. Instead, the week after his gala, most of the coverage about it wasn't about the money raised or the people it will help. It was about a 3-second clip and a statement he felt he had to release to manage it.
We also had this David Foster thing. A harmless interaction that would have been harmless on any other red carpet.
That's an outcome nobody in his position signs up for when they hand out an invitation. And it's not hard to see why other people in that same industry might start thinking twice before doing the same thing.
Wants to be caught up in this mess. And it's becoming so increasingly toxic that just to be seen with them and have one minor weird interaction, which I don't really think was all that weird, all of a sudden becomes a global story overnight. And it's a bunch of nonsense.
Inviting Harry and Meghan to an event used to come with an obvious upside. Extra attention, extra headlines, a bump in visibility for whatever the actual cause was. Increasingly, it seems to come with a different kind of attention instead, the kind that has nothing to do with the cause at all, and everything to do with picking apart every gesture, every glance, every few inches of distance between 4 people standing on a carpet.
He was bringing them up for promo. He brought them up not because they're his friend. I don't think, again, he really actually gives a crap about either of them, but because it would bring extra attention to his gala, perhaps more money to it, and that was a point. But again, now his legacy has gotten totally overridden in this particular instance for this gala, which I understand somebody told me was actually a huge milestone in the foundation because now it's raised enough money to be self-sustaining for many years. Now it's been totally overshadowed by this.
Put all of it together. A friendship that started with a suspiciously staged dinner. A rumoured falling out shortly after, tied, according to an unverified claim, to Meghan's behaviour around David Foster specifically. Years of near total silence between the two couples that followed. And then, the very first time they're back in the same frame, cameras catch Meghan appearing to sideline Katharine McPhee within seconds of arriving. If there's a snub buried somewhere in this story, it might not be the one everyone spent an entire week arguing about. David Foster spent that same week talking about a missed handshake instead of talking about the $14.5 million his foundation raised that night for a cause he spent years building. That's the actual cost here. Not a headline about a handshake, but an entire fundraising milestone. The real reason the gala existed in the first place, buried under a story about who was or wasn't looking at who. And that only really makes sense if the story David Foster was managing was never about a handshake to begin with. Whatever actually happened between these two couples over the last 5 years, one thing is clear. Nobody walked away from that red carpet looking entirely comfortable. Not Meghan, not David, and definitely not Katharine, standing a few inches from a conversation that, by every angle available, wasn't really about her. Go back to that freeze frame from the start of this video. The one everyone's already seen 100 times. The hand hanging in the air. Now picture the 2 seconds right before it, the ones almost nobody bothered to slow down for. That's usually how these stories work. The moment everyone screenshots is rarely the one that actually explains anything. The real story is almost always sitting just outside the frame, waiting for somebody to rewind far enough to find it. If there's more to this story than a missed handshake, say so in the comments below. And if you want more of these breakdowns, the parts other channels keep skipping past, hit subscribe because this one isn't over yet.